Hello, good evening and welcome to ITV News. This is Wednesday night's calendar.
And here are tonight's main stories.
It could have been me, the Yorkshire businessman who signed up for a Titanic dive but pulled out over safety concerns. His friend Hamish Harding is on board.
I think I'm extremely concerned for Hamish, the other 4 people in the vessel, but I'm also concerned for their friends and family who must be suffering dreadfully at the moment.
Missing woman. Police say a body's being found in the search for Sophie Lambert in the Nid Gorge.
Parents plea, the mothers from our region demanding proper schooling for their children with special educational needs.
It needs to change, parents with children out of school completely, no school placement at all, having to give up work to homeschool, and what kind of life is that?
And taking a trip down memory lane, the project to make decades worth of film archive available to the public. Well, first tonight, for an explorer in North Yorkshire, it could have been the trip of a lifetime at a cost of £200,000.
Chris Brown from Harrogate was due to dive down to see the Titanic on the same submersible as his billionaire friend Hamish Harding. But he pulled out because of concerns about the vessel's safety.
Well, his friend went ahead and hasn't been seen since Sunday. The race is on to find father of 2 Hamish and 4 others on board. And it's feared they may only have enough oxygen to survive until tomorrow morning. Well, we spoke to Chris a little earlier to find out how his friend will be coping.
I think I'm extremely concerned for Hamish, the other 4 people in the vessel, but I'm also concerned for their friends and family who must be suffering dreadfully at the moment.
So how do you think he'll be coping in this situation?
Knowing Hamish, he'll be extremely calm. He's well aware of risks in the exploration space. He's probably going through logically all the ways that they could help themselves whilst making it as easy as possible to be found. We heard this morning that there's possibly sounds coming from down in the ocean. That would suggest that the vessel hasn't surfaced and is bobbing around somewhere without communications. The fact that the sounds are coming every 30 minutes implies that's human-made, and that's got Hamish's fingerprints all over it, letting people know that it's not just random people banging on the tub, but they're doing it in a controlled manner to show it's human-made.
Do you think that the group would have understood the possibility that something like this could happen?
I think everybody who goes on these sort of expeditions is aware that there's always quite a large downside. They'll have assessed the risks themselves, maybe even written them down. When you go on expeditions like I've been on, you tend to look at each risk individually. You try and mitigate it by bringing in experts, by maybe changing timings, using different equipment. It's a little different in this case because you're solely reliant on the submersible, but they'll have been well aware of the risks, yes.
Now, you elected not to take a trip on the submersible despite having paid a deposit. What changed your mind?
I had a look at the risks involved there and decided against doing it, but that's not really the thing that we should be looking at right now. There's still 5 people trapped under the ocean that we should be thinking about them, rescuing them and setting our feelings towards their friends and family.
How are Hamish's family under the circumstances?
It's hard to tell at distance because it's all been by text and things. Holding up is all I can say.
Chris, you've been on a polar expedition. Is it just an inevitability that when you push the boundaries, things like this will happen?
I think it is. Like I said, we all tend to assess the risks. Every now and then those risks are going to turn against us. One of the things that we're probably guilty of as explorers is leaving our families and loved ones out of that sort of circle. We've assessed the risks, we know what's going to happen, we know how things can go wrong and what will happen in those situations, but friends and family are kind of just left there to guess what's going on, and that could be worse in a way.
Chris Brown, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Well, it's an extraordinary drama, of course, which has gripped the world, and you'll be able to catch much more on the ITV News, which follows at 6:30 tonight.
Yeah, and that was Chris Brown speaking to us. Now, 2 mothers from Yorkshire travelled to Westminster today, along with hundreds of other parents who say they can't get proper schooling for their children with special educational needs.
Yes, families say they're desperate for help, as the number of children who should receive special needs support has doubled across the country in recent years. Well, they handed a petition into Downing Street as the government admitted there is a problem. Our political correspondent, Katie Oscroft, reports.
In the shadow of the Houses of Parliament, hundreds of parents from across the country unable to get the help they say their children urgently need. Amongst them, Sandeep from Leeds. She says her little boy is struggling in mainstream education when he ought to be in a special needs school.
My house?
Your house.
Kavi is autistic and currently in a class of 30.
I can't get a place. Everywhere's full in my borough and the next borough, or they've come to see him, deputy heads from the school, and they say they can't meet his needs. So that just leaves him in mainstream again. I wouldn't say it's hard bringing my child up, it's not having the support. There's not enough support, we need more support, and that's something that there isn't a lot of, and they're being failed.
When you're trying to fight a system that's broken.
2 of Catherine's 3 children are autistic. Her daughter was held back for a year, whilst Catherine, who's from Keighley, secured her special needs school place. A process she describes as fighting a battle.
Everyone coming together is just proving that there's a huge issue everywhere. It's not just one area, and it needs to change. You know, parents with children out of school completely, no school placement at all, having to give up work to homeschool, and you know what kind of life is that?
In a statement, the Department for Education said, "We are aware that some local areas aren't delivering education, health and care plans as they should. Where local areas are failing, the department will intervene using a range of improvement programmes and support from specialist advisors to address weaknesses." But as the number of children with a special needs support plan goes up, parents handed in a petition to Downing Street calling for all youngsters who need it to be accommodated in appropriate educational settings. Parents say that government changes made earlier this year haven't been able to keep up with demand.
The government definitely need to put more money into the SEND sector. It is so many children, as you can see, are being failed. Like, everybody's here. They've already got 60,000 signatures on the petition.
Kavi is one of hundreds of children whose parents fear their childhoods are slipping away without getting the educational support they need.
Well, Katie joins us from Westminster. Katie, the government admits there is a problem in some areas, but are parents satisfied that enough is being done?
Well, no, they're not, John. And if I can take you back to March to explain that, back then changes were made which were supposed to even out services across local authorities. And the government promised to transform provision for special educational needs and disabilities. There was a promise of thousands more places. But you heard the parents there talking to me for my report earlier. You saw them gathering in numbers in Parliament Square, and they were describing how their child had been assessed as needing special support in school, but they were simply unable to access a place and to get their hands on it. And their concern is that as every year goes by, their children are missing out on vital education.
Now, here's the thing. It is, of course, local authorities that provide the educational places. So what have they had to say?
Well, the local authorities are in no doubt that there has been a surge in demand for these places. But take Bradford. Now, that's Catherine's local authority. You heard from her in my report. They say they understand the frustrations of some parents, but they say that funding in their local authority year on year is increasing. And actually, they say that in Bradford, it's above the national average. But back to those parents I spoke to earlier, and they were telling me that's not their experience. And they also said it's not just the fact that they can't get their hands on their places, it's the fact that the sheer effort that they have to go through just to try to access what their child is entitled to, what their child has been assessed as needing. And they say that that adds to the difficulties they're already under on a daily basis.
OK, Katie in Westminster, thank you.
Next to the tragic news that a body has been found in North Yorkshire during the search for a young woman who'd gone missing from Harrogate.
Sophie Lambert was last seen on Friday after leaving home. Now, a major search was launched in the Nid Gorge earlier this week. From Knaresborough, here's Fraser Maud.
It's sad to think that somewhere as beautiful as this should be the place where such tragic events have unfolded. Police have confirmed that this morning they recovered a body from the River Nid, somewhere in the vicinity of Nid Gorge, which is where we're standing now. All the way down the paths to get to this area, there are posters appealing for people with any information of Sophie's whereabouts to get in touch. Sadly, it seems as though those attempts have been in vain. Just 22 years old, Sophie Lambert went missing on Friday evening. She was last seen by her parents shortly after 7 o'clock, and CCTV footage from her front door shows her leaving the house. It was 3 hours after that she was reported missing, and then on Saturday some of her items were found here in Nid Gorge, including some items of clothing, a bank card and a telephone. It was then that police stepped up their efforts to try and find her. That involved the RAF mountain rescue teams, aerial support including drones and helicopters, and underwater search teams as they scoured the area, but were using dozens of officers on foot as well as they desperately tried to find Sophie. But after 4 days of searching, those searches came to nothing, and today the sad news that a body has been recovered from the water here. Police say it's too early for a formal identification, but they say that Sophie Lambert's parents have been informed and are currently being assisted by specially trained officers. They'd also like to thank all members of the public for their assistance in trying to find Sophie. So, a story with a tragic end. 22-year-old Sophie Lambert, police believe, is the body that they recovered from the River Nid here earlier on today. Fraser Maud, ITV News, the River Nid.
OK, you're watching Calendar. Still to come. A brand new emergency department opens its doors in Chesterfield.
And facing the Iron Lady, one of the archive treats on show in a walk down memory lane. Some more news from around the region now, and Yorkshire Air Ambulance have a new helicopter to help them provide better emergency medical care in the region. Today, people will get the first glimpse of G Yorks. It's said to have a smoother ride, beneficial to patients and more fuel capacity. The team says 90% of Yorkshire will now receive life-saving care within 20 minutes.
The mechanics of the aircraft are a little bit lighter. And there's a slight performance upgrade as well. So we're able to carry, on average, about 20 minutes extra fuel, which is the difference between another task. So we're just able to extend our endurance on the aircraft.
It's very humbling that the people of Yorkshire trust us so much to support us, to give up their hard-earned money. But they're investing in their county, they're investing in their own safety potentially. And for us, it's a humbling but rewarding experience.
Well, to Bradford next, because the government says that plans for a potential new railway station in the city will be unveiled next week. There was outrage, you may remember, in Bradford in 2021 when the government's integrated rail plan downgraded plans for a station on a new line connecting it with Leeds and Manchester. Well, the rail minister today told MPs that the government will set out its initial proposals for how a new station could be opened in the city as part of its so-called levelling up commitment.
Following the comments made by the Prime Minister during last summer, during the hustings, was getting better options assessed for Bradford and enabling Bradford to put forward a new station to help them with their city centre regeneration. And that's something that we're very keen to do.
A study by York charity, the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, has found more than 5 million low-income households are having to skip meals because of the rising cost of living. It's calling on the government to ensure basic universal credit covers things like nutritious food. The government says they've raised benefits, including universal credit, by just over 10%.
A team of refugee footballers have been taking on a women's parliamentary club in five-a-side games today. The Afghan National Development Squad also took time off the pitch to share their stories with ministers. The Batley and Spen MP Kim Leadbeater says it was an honour to take part in the event as part of Refugee Week.
That was pretty intense. It was 8 minutes of my life I won't forget, but really, really good. This morning is a really powerful way of showing the power of sport to bring people together, and I'm absolutely honoured to be a part of it.
As someone who's playing a sport, I believe that sport is bringing people together. It doesn't matter where they are from or which nationality they are. Football or any sport, this green pitch or any pitch, any sport pitch can bring people together and everyone is equal.
Yeah, it's great to see people being brought together, isn't it? Now, a bit of good news for you. A new £27 million emergency department has opened at Chesterfield Royal Hospital. It's the largest new development there since it opened in 1984, although patients are being urged only to use it if it's a genuine emergency.
Well, here's a statistic. The hospital says around 70% of patients using the service could have been treated elsewhere. And they're keen to stress, here is the phrase, if it can wait till after tea, it's not an emergency. Adam Fowler reports.
8 years in the making, the doors are finally open at Chesterfield Royal Hospital's new emergency department. It was delivered on time and under budget, despite a variety of obstacles.
We broke ground as Boris, or the Prime Minister, announced the lockdown. So as lockdown was announced, we started erecting the frame. So we've built this building through COVID, steel shortages, supply shortages, war in Ukraine, Brexit, and we've completed it ahead of schedule and under budget. So in the face of all of that, I think Chesterfield's really achieved something quite incredible.
What do you think of this new emergency department?
It's a lot better, and I like it's like cooler as well, and it's like I feel it's more organised already than the previous one.
It's seamless, walked in, seen there, sit down, saw somebody. Seems to be working relatively smoothly.
It's easy to follow around, everything's like signposted really well.
The new building replaces the previous emergency department, which was designed in the 1970s.
It was originally designed to see about 50 patients a day, and we've been seeing vastly in excess of that over many, many years. So what this means is faster care, state-of-the-art resuscitation areas, different ways of caring for people, faster flow, better patient experience. So it's an incredible day for Chesterfield.
It's got a dedicated paediatric area, it's got a dedicated area for people who are neurodiverse, and in addition to that, it's got some really fantastic facilities for training our staff. So on the second floor of the building, there's lots of conference rooms, simulation rooms. All of, in the end, is about giving really great care to the patients.
Sarah's a paramedic who's responsible for making sure patients are transferred from ambulances as quickly as possible.
Everything is brand new, the rooms are set up so it makes it a lot easier for handovers for ambulance staff. They've got handover stations, we've got ambulance arrival boards, hopefully it will help with the flow of patients through the department.
Yeah, so it makes your job easier as well then?
I'm hoping so, yes, definitely.
Despite pride in the new department, staff are keen that it's only used by those who really need it.
There's lots of alternatives to emergency departments for people. We've got NHS 111, pharmacists, GPs, urgent treatment centres. We are an emergency department. We're here for everybody that needs us, but I think I would really ask that people only use us if you really need us.
The new unit can accommodate more than 115,000 patients per year. Adam Fowler, ITV News, Chesterfield.
So the message is, yes, only in an emergency. I've got to say, every time I went to hospital, usually after breaking bits playing football, they said, you again? And it was an emergency, honest.
Right, honest. OK. Moving on swiftly.
Yes, well, we're staying with health because you've got a dog, haven't you, George?
George is my dog, yes.
Here's the health. Has he ever had a tick?
Well, yeah, he has. Has your dog ever had a tick? They are so tricky to get out.
Well, they are difficult. Difficult for dogs, but also a problem for us humans. In fact, one GP in Doncaster is warning us to cover up in the warm weather to avoid being bitten by a tick.
Yeah. Well, the tiny insect actually carries many viruses, including Lyme disease and potentially fatal encephalitis, which it can pass on to us humans. So our reporter, Amrit Birdie, has been finding out more.
Summer in the UK means one thing for many of us, shorts weather. But for those who like to get out into the countryside, having skin on show at this time of year can have frightening consequences. Just ask Tracy Winchester. 3 years ago, after taking her dog for a walk, she noticed an unusual itchy rash on her leg.
It was under my trousers and I didn't have time to deal with it, so I just kind of got on with the day, but it was really irritating me. In the end, I had a fast-track referral because they were worried that there was something sinister going on. And then in the end, we sort of went to ear, nose and throat department at the local hospital, and they just sort of very flippantly went, when I said about the history and what had happened recently, yeah, it's probably because of the Lyme disease. And then I was just sort of like, oh, okay. The sort of bizarreness of the sort of, you'll have almost like periods of different flare-ups of different random stuff. My cognitive skills just aren't what they were. I would imagine there's so many people out there probably with symptoms that don't realise what it is.
The government estimates there's around 2,000 to 3,000 new cases of tick-borne Lyme disease every year in England and Wales. GP Dr Dean Eggett from Doncaster says there are some key symptoms to look out for.
It starts out a bit flu-like, so you might get a bit of a rash, you end up feeling fluey, achy, generally quite grotty, and then in some cases that can actually go on to develop infections of different parts of the body, so the brain in particular, the heart, the lungs, those sorts of things. So actually the consequences of Lyme disease can be quite serious.
But it's not just Lyme disease that we need to protect against. There's another life-altering tick-borne condition that causes the brain to swell.
We've just had our first confirmed domestic case of tick-borne encephalitis in the UK. I think the message to get across to people is this is a preventable disease with the right knowledge. We try and encourage schools to put awareness information out if they're doing school trips where they're likely to meet up with ticks. They need to make sure the children are aware. If we can prevent a bite, then you're minimising the chance of getting any of these diseases.
There are ways to significantly reduce you and your family's chances of getting bitten by a tick, such as using an insect repellent that repels biting insects, like ticks and mosquitoes, wearing long-sleeve tops and tucking trousers into socks to reduce skin exposure. When hiking or doing other outdoor activities, stick to pathways where there tends to be less long grass. Having a shower as soon as you return indoors, and always checking yourself, your children and your pets for ticks, and brush off any that are unattached. Covering up in the countryside might just save your life. Amrit Birdie, ITV News.
Thanks, Amrit. We have been warned.
You've got your trousers tucked into socks. Now the ITV Evening News continues here at 6:30. Here's a look at what's happening with Mary Nightingale.
Coming up on the programme, could there be a glimmer of hope in the search for the missing Titanic sub? Banging noises are detected underwater, but it is still a race against time to find and rescue those on board. Eyewitness accounts from the front line in Ukraine. We report on the soldiers fighting back against Russia. Here, inflation shock. The UK's rate fails to fall. Now interest rates are expected to rise again. And campers arrive at Worthy Farm. We'll be live at Glastonbury. Do join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Thanks, Mary. We'll see you shortly. Now, if you like us, you've probably got plenty of old VHS videos kicking around at home, have you?
I've got a few family videos on VHS, but to be honest, they're pretty useless, aren't they? Because I've got nothing to play them on.
That's the difficulty. Well, you actually need to digitise them, just like the British Film Institute, who started a project to digitise 6 decades worth of material to preserve it for generations to come.
And I bet some of those recordings include old material from Yorkshire Television. And calendar.
Yeah. Well, it does. Kevin Ashford reports.
Enter firewoman Roundtree with news of her first posting, Blue Watch at Castleford this Saturday, and whatever that may bring.
Another piece of history saved by the Yorkshire Film Archive based in York, home to moments like these from across the region. And some of the collection is now being made available to a wider audience thanks to a project called BFI Replay, where 100,000 pieces of video from over the years and from around the country are digitised. That is, copied from tape into a form that can be stored on computer.
There's no reason not to have a happy, bug-free New Year. Cheers.
This is the oldest one. This is 2-inch tape.
Over the years, videotape has seen many formats, and that's presented its own problems.
All of these different kinds of videotapes require different types of machinery to play them, and that's why they're at risk, because those machines are not being made anymore, and it's very difficult to get parts for those machines. And so it's really important to digitise these videos while that machinery is still operational, and so that we can preserve all the programmes and video content that's on all of these thousands of tapes.
You were born in the same year as the Queen.
Among the offerings from the Yorkshire Film Archive are a number featuring a familiar face.
I really love that the collections have a lot of work by Richard Whiteley. The late Richard Whiteley, he was so prolific as a broadcaster, and we sometimes forget that in the late 70s he was a really excellent chat show host. And so Calendar People is featured on BFI Replay, and that features some great interviews, including James Herriot, Gilly Cooper, Lady and Lord Harewood. It's a wonderful collection.
The BFI Replay archive is available to view for free at public libraries across the country.
It'll be there for the real TV buffs who are doing research, and then just people for leisure browsing, to reminisce, to explore. And I'm really hoping that actually we can use it, ourselves to sort of have some interesting talks and discussions in the library as well.
Libraries wanting to offer the service will need to register with the BFI. Kevin Ashford, ITV News.
Be great to have a look back on some of that old footage.
Nostalgia.
Yeah, definitely.
Bang up to date now. Here's the weather with Chris Page.
Good visibility on the horizon. TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
Hello there. Very good evening to you. Plenty of sunshine on the summer solstice today, the longest day of the year. And these are the scenes first thing this morning in Bridlington. As you can see, a lovely sunrise photo as that sunshine just popped its way over the horizon early doors this morning. But for most of us across the region today, we've had some sunshine, although a scattering of showers. Now, high pressure still in control of the weather just about as we head towards the weekend. We are going to begin to see some showers through Friday and possibly into Saturday too. But I suspect for most of us, staying largely dry, but the winds starting to pull their way in from the near continent and from the south and west. It's set to turn warmer and more humid for all too. Now back to the here and now. Through the rest of this evening and overnight, we're going to have some clear skies around. Any showers that we have seen through today are going to fairly melt away. Quite a mild night for sleeping tonight. Temperatures just holding up around 14, near 17 degrees Celsius. They're quite uncomfortable for sleeping overnight tonight. But for tomorrow, we start with some sunny spells. The sunshine gets to work and that will start to develop some showers. These will be slow moving, but I think they'll just fade and fade away quite quickly, maybe in a space of half an hour or so. So still with some sunshine tomorrow. Always the best of that sunshine further east with top temperatures 24, maybe 25 degrees Celsius, which is about 77 in Fahrenheit. Now as we leave Thursday and go into Friday, still the risk of 1 or 2 showers as we go through Friday as this little weather system encroaches in from the west. But I do suspect we'll still see some sunshine, and where we've got the sunshine once again, it will feel quite warm and quite pleasant. More sunshine in the forecast on Saturday, but as we go into Sunday, a weather front arrives from the west, but it will feel rather warm and humid. Pollen's next.
TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
Hello, summer. Piri sponsors ITV Pollen Count.
And as for that all-important pollen forecast, as we continue to hold on to those rather high temperatures and we're in the middle of the grass pollen season, it's no surprise that pollen levels will remain at very high. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Chris. That's it from us for now.
Yeah, anyone would think it was the summer, wouldn't they, with those temperatures. I'm back at 10:30 and Mary is next. I'll see you later. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.